cold there too, wasn't it?
100 degrees.
I promise I did not.
I saw a picture of you on the beach where you bundled in.
Well, that was a 100 degrees. That's on the third day. Everything
All righty, I have 3 p.m. We'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. This is the first FY 21-22 Budget Development Workshop. Turn it over to the County Administrator. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The primary objective of this first of 3 budget workshops is to have a free and open discussion with the board, seek direction, initiatives, and challenges for the that we're foreseeing in the FY 2021 and 22 budget, which is considerable. At this point in the budget development process, the purpose is to focus on general concepts and ideas for constructing the effective budget plus the 5-year forecast rather than focusing on specific revenues and expenses. The budget is due to the Board of County Commissioners on July 15th. Our next scheduled workshop is July 12th at 2021. So out of this, we'll be refining the budget so that we can have a final budget or another budget workshop on the 12th and then send it over to you guys on the 15th. So with that, Brandy has prepared a presentation. We have...
David, when do you figure the numbers from Ed?
What's that?
When are you figuring Ed's numbers to bring in?
We're going to just let us get there. Let us get there. So anyway, I'm going to turn it over to Brandy at this time, and we'll take off. Just sit up.
Look, in here. As David mentioned, the budget is due to you guys on July 15th, and so through this workshop, please stop me, please ask questions, please talk among yourselves, because we need some direction. Everything we're going to talk about today is more conceptual. Usually at this point in the budget process, we have a lot more finalized numbers, and we do on the expense side, but there's a lot of things that we're still waiting for and we're looking at as far as it relates to revenue. So the current fiscal year, we've been pretty active with completing a lot of different studies that were necessary so we can move forward and grow properly. One of those, and most significantly, being a compensation study of our employee across the county-wide, all the elected officials, and what those positions should pay, what they should pay as a market value, how it relates to the new laws passed in Florida about minimum wage. So that is a significant study that we've accomplished this current fiscal year. Right now we have preliminary results. We don't have the finalized document. And we've got the MSBU study underway, as well as a sewer rate study. Same thing, we have preliminary documents on those, enough for planning tools, and we'll have finalized documents on all those studies as we get further along in the process. So now that we've completed these studies, we're going to need to make some operational changes to implement the results of these studies. And then this is going to be the first fiscal year that we have budgeted for where we really feel the impact of losing that housing for prisoner revenue. So we have a challenge there alone because we're no longer going to be subsidizing the sheriff's fund with that ICE revenue. And then in addition to that, we have 4 new elected officials this year who have all spent some time in their offices looking at how their office functions, what kind of technology they have or they were left with. And so there's going to be some requests from them as well that kind of bring them more current with technology. And since their offices provide very important functions as far as valuation of property, things like that, and then our elections office with security, they're asking for some pretty significant changes in their office. So we've got a lot of things going on. Everything we're going to talk about today is really conceptual, high-level stuff. You want to go to the next one. So the biggest thing we have, like I said, is our compensation study. That's going to be discussed with, or if it hasn't already, it will be discussed with all of our constitutional officers. Right now, for the BOCC, we're looking at kind of a hybrid implementation. It's not going to be a one-size-fits-all. We have to really look at each individual position within the county and kind of make a judgment call, looking at that new minimum wage law that's coming into effect down the road, looking at the COLA, looking at where that's going to take that position over the course of 5 years. So it's really going to be, I don't want to say selectively applied, but we are going to have to make an analysis of each individual position, and that's going to occur in your elected offices as well. The clerk situation is different from the property appraised situation, so they're going to need to look at all their individual positions and figure out what's best for their office and how they need to apply that change related to the new minimum wage, the COLAs, and the market value adjustment. So obviously, the BOCC, the Sheriff's Office, we have the largest employee bases. It's going to impact us a little more significantly, but those are things that David and I, the Sheriff, everybody that is submitted a budget request, will be looking at all that over the next several weeks to figure out what's the best way for each office to implement it. One of the things we talked about this year, and I don't think this has happened since you've been here, about CHP increases. It's a possibility that we may need to start passing all or a portion of that on to the employee. The board has always absorbed it. It's quite an increase each year depending on what plan each employee has, so it's a significant cost for the BOCC. And in talking with the other offices, we also found out that we're doing things a little bit differently there. For example, the Sheriff's Office, they pay 90%, the employee pays 10%, whatever that is. The BOCC has a range of about 86% to 90%. Supervisor of Elections, they follow our tiers exactly. I think the property appraiser does. The clerks has a couple little different things with senior management positions. So everybody's implementing the CHP increases a little bit differently as well. So those are going to be some things that we're looking at over the next couple of weeks.
Now, what does that statement, minimum per hour or COLA mean?
What we initially thought, we would take everybody that was less than $15 an hour, go ahead and bump them up to $15 an hour, or give them a COLA, whichever was greater, because we're going to have to get there anyway, and we're going to talk about some of the benefits of doing that in a little bit. But as we looked at that, we have some employees that may be at $15 an hour that our compensation study says they're at market value. So do you leave them out entirely? Do you pass on the COLA? And those are the kind of things that we really have to come up with the best way to implement and be fair to everybody, get to where we need to be down the road with the minimum wage requirements.
What happened to the three options when we met? One was go to $11 an hour, minimum wage. One was go all the way to 15, and one was status quo, basically.
That was what we presented to you guys, and ladies. And that's something that we're going to continue to talk with you about. I'm actually working right now on a spreadsheet. In fact, Greg and I are going to meet tomorrow and compare our spreadsheets, because we're kind of doing the same thing about a plan that staggers this thing out about 3 years, but initially takes care of the $15 an hour, but then we bring it in over a period of time. But I'm working on that spreadsheet now.
We would use our revenue stabilization?
Yes, we more than likely, this, as going to your question that your roundabout way you just asked, yes, we're going to wait for the property appraiser's his evaluation in June. As soon as we get that, then we'll be able to say, here's what we can do. And normally we can hit the property appraiser's number fairly close, but with all the changes going on and the new management, etc., we're a little scared to do that, because we're scared we might under project. So that's what we're trying to do, and that way we wait, because it's going to be a large increase. No matter what happens, we just don't want to overshoot right now.
And of course, like I said, when we talked, my preference would be not to hit it all at one time on the millage rate.
That's right.
See if the values go over.
Well, and that's what we got to project. Once we see the values today, we got to roll those out and see how all that math works, because everything's got to work within a 5-year window, because that's what we're planning on. So that we'll look at it from that standpoint.
Can I just ask one question, Brandy?
Yes.
Between his stuff in June and our stuff in July, we'll have a better sense of the numbers by the July meeting.
Yes, we will. The property appraiser will certify the values before July 1st, on or before July 1st. So we will definitely have it set in stone at that time. Real numbers. Go to the next slide. And like Commissioner Mayor just said, everything's on the table for how we implement this. You know, we did receive a couple different plans from our Evergreen Solutions, and so it's just a matter of how we can make everything work. So 21-22 is going to be, excuse me, quite a transitional year for us. We got a lot of things going on. There is one thing that I want to make sure, I'm sorry. If you can do
As you were saying, it's a transitional year. Normally, as you know,
Very McLean.
Yeah. As you know, we have in the past operated with a cap on expenses, each individual office, unless there was some, especially on reoccurring revenue, especially unless there was some or something that wasn't within the box. Because the only way that you can really control what's going on is everybody stay within their cap. And that has worked and got us to where we are today, but the problem is now with all the different changes that we've got going on, this year we see we're going to not be able to hold to that cap, and we have an administrative regulation for that. But moving forward, just to let the constitutionals know that we will have to, if we go forward as budget, we're going to have to stick to the 3% unless we're adjusting for the salaries. The salary and wage study continues to go according to how that staggers out. But at 3%, we have to stick to that. If not, we're going to be back in trouble again. So
We need to do something special to make an exception this year.
well, and I don't think so. We're just notifying you right now that the cap will be blown, but the biggest thing is for the constitutionals, and the sheriff's department understands it because Jared has lived and breathed and ate it just like we have, but the rest of them, other than Greg, we have to stick to that 3%, if not under. Moving forward. But that's what this means is this is the year that we think we'll say, hey, we can't apply it this year due to all the changes, but we've got to get back to it. Get back to that discipline. Also, there must be additional reoccurring revenue to fund the needed operational increases. I think it'll be a combination of rate increases and non-reoccurring transfer to ease the transition, meaning I think we'll use some of our revenue stabilization fund. That's what it was meant for. Use some of that to make the difference up, and what we need to do is run the model over the 5-year period to determine at what pace do we use the transition based upon the growth curve that maybe we can project a good growth and come out and say, okay, we can ease off the revenue stabilization in year 3 or 4 and everything is caught back up. We've normally in the past done a really good job of that, so that's what we're planning on presenting to you guys and gals and ladies.
And Quincy.
I think I'm good now. Y'all don't believe it, but I don't normally talk this much at one time.
I thought you were joking.
Yeah, this is heartbreaking. Some of it is. It really is. One thing I wanted to add about our need to make sure we have recurring revenue to fund our operational increases are the ARPA funds. We find ourselves in a pretty unique situation with the CARES funds and then the ARPA American Rescue Plan Act funds. And what we're seeing so far, the guidance that's coming out is you can use it to replace lost revenue, but you have to go back and compare it to the fiscal year prior to any COVID impact. So we are certain we can justify it just specifically to the sheriff's office, some of our decline in ICE revenue. And so it is appropriate to kind of seed these increases a little bit, as long as we all understand that this is just to kind of get us off the ground, ease into the transition of maybe a millage rate increase or whatever that is. But it's a very unique situation we're in with having these federal funds coming our way, and they're coming direct from the Treasury. There will be a budget amendment on the June meeting to bring the funds into the budget, about $6.5 million. We're basically going to be parking it for now in a reserve line until we develop the program and come up with a plan of exactly, we know the road fund lost some money, how much is going to go to the road fund, how much is going to go to ICE.
To tell you to be very careful the way you word your...
Yeah, it's gonna come in revenue.
It's gonna come, but we'll talk about it at
We don't
future
have to worry
meetings.
about reimbursing it, though. I thought we still had to worry about, eventually, maybe we needed to sit on that money for a little bit, decide whether or not we were gonna have to give it back or not.
As long as we utilize that out of revenue stabilization fund, we should be fine.
So,
I gotta,
come on down.
Thank you.
oh goodness.
Per your auditor, you have already spent the CARES Act money. It doesn't exist. It's already reimbursed the sheriff's office expenses and our emergency personnel. It's already been spent. It's not sitting anywhere. Does everyone understand that? I want to make sure that's a technicality, but it's very clear. We spent the CARES Act money when we reimbursed the sheriff's office and fire and EMS. Now, those funds supplanted general fund dollars, and those general fund dollars are sitting somewhere else, and we're sitting on that. We are not sitting on CARES Act money. That CARES Act money is gone.
No, we spent that.
So, just a question. At the beginning of the COVID crisis, we redirected some funds away from departments. Have we replaced that money back into those departments?
Nope.
So, I know we took money out of the libraries.
We didn't take any money out, we just reduced spending. So it wasn't taking anything, it just we didn't allow spending to go on at the rate that it was scheduled to go on, so we just reduced spending. Is that a good way to put it?
Well, what we did was
The library was a little bit different because we ended up using state.
we diverted some costs that normally would hit the general fund into other places where we could, but when we got to the end of the year, we had to true up that grant fund, and so a lot of those expenses that we moved over to the state aid fund got moved back to the general fund anyway. I think the other thing that you're thinking of is that we deferred some capital costs, like we were set to get a new phone system for the BOCC in 1920. We deferred that, and we're going to be bringing that to you here in our next meeting, I think, to move forward with that. So a lot of what we deferred was actually like one-time purchases and capital.
I was just remembering that we took money and we didn't give money to the library that we were going to.
Yes, general fund dollars, but it ended up being a washout at the end of 1920 when we closed it out. So looking at some of these concepts that we're talking about, changes, this is going to be, it's difficult to change, especially so drastic in one year. But one of the things that we're seeing as it relates to compensation is having a very difficult time filling positions. This includes like some just labor positions and other, technical skills positions as well. So one of the goals here, if we go ahead and maybe implement the $15 an hour earlier than required, is it can help us with a little bit of recruitment for the county. If we can bring these people in, offer a little bit higher starting wage, we're hoping that some of these positions we can fill a little quicker. And we don't want to see any level of service decline. And this is kind of specific to our firefighters and our emergency services, and we're going to dive deeper into that in a minute. But we're coming to a point where the frequency of not having a firefighter or an emergency med crew in the county is getting, it's almost too much to bear, and we're one accident or incident away from being in serious trouble. And then we want to make sure we don't want to deteriorate our finances. So having that recurring revenue that we talked about and a way to fund these things is very important, because you all have made a lot of good decisions in the past, and we have healthy fund balances, healthy reserves, and we need to continue that, because it's protected us quite a bit last year when we were concerned over what was going to happen to our revenue.
Just so we're not sugarcoating it, reoccurring revenue equals tax increase.
Tax increase, charges for services.
So if we didn't have the $15 an hour statute requirement, the salary study, if we fully implemented that, would there still be people below $15?
If we implemented the second plan at going to the minimum of $15, no.
No, let's say if there was no $15 statute, that was off the table, there was no requirement. Just the result from the salary study, if we fully implemented what they're recommending there, would that still leave people below 15?
I'm pretty sure.
No. If we fully implemented, no.
Yes, we went over this, yes, it did. There were still people making less than $15 an hour.
At the plan one, but if we fully implemented,
That's what he's talking
okay.
about, Plan 1. It's just the status quo with the salary study.
Yes.
There were people below 15.
Okay.
Go to the next slide here. This is a chart, and I gave you another worksheet up there. We're going to get to that on the next slide. But this is the difference in the transfers that have been requested from the elected officers, and I'm going to give each one of them an opportunity to speak to their individual increase if they would like to. And this does not include any contingency in their individual fund. This is just the amount of the transfer that would need to come from the BOCC into their fund to fund the request that they had asked. I'll start with Greg because he's first. And there is one thing that's not included in the clerk's office request right now. Do you want to speak on the auditing, internal auditing?
Yeah, I'll mention that. Thank you, Commissioners. So the budget request that we submitted contains an estimated 8% increase in CHP and 3% in FRS. So that will be subject to change. Hopefully the CHP will be lower. I think you sent out an advisement on 6%, and we bumped it up higher simply because it tends to be higher than 6%. But and then that's all that represents. It doesn't represent a 2% COLA across the board or anything like that. So there's no salary increases in this budget request whatsoever.
Looking at 2.4 mils that the Constitution was asking for, number one. That's before we even implement the wage study.
Well, I can't speak as to whether or not the others do or don't include wage adjustments. Theirs may, with those rate increases. Ours does not. And so that's why it may look on the board smaller. It's because we didn't have the compensation study at the time. I didn't want to swag it, so I didn't turn anything in on compensation study until we digested it and knew what you as a board are going to do. And so we will probably be amending our request subsequent to some better direction, I guess, on the compensation study. So it will go up depending on what the board does overall.
Sorry, Greg.
That's all right. We also, the clerk's office recognizes the many different issues that are going on with all of the different funds between MSBU, the sewer, and housing prisoner and impact to general fund. So there's never a good time to ask for an increase, I suppose, but we also want to put on the table, even if I will submit a budget amendment request to include a internal audit department. It'll be the first time we ever have that. And this year may not be the best year to start that, because of all the other issues, but at least a year from now, I'll be able to say I've already asked for it once. So get on the calendar, I guess, and start the clock ticking. I think all of you understand and realize the positive impact that an internal audit department would have in ensuring that there's no fraud, and well, we can't ensure that there's never fraud, but we'll be looking for it, and ensuring that county policies are followed. I don't have a good number on what that would cost. I've started some conversations with other clerks who do have internal audit departments, and they're expensive. You're hiring a very technical, professional expertise at that point. And so my estimate would be a one-person shop would cost around $100 to $110. A two-person shop would cost anywhere from $125,000 to $150,000. So I don't have a hard number yet, but so that's a rather insignificant number overall as to what it will get us. So, but I will submit for that request as well. Final point is you're only seeing part of the clerk's budget. We have 23 employees, including myself, and that only funds the maintenance department and our finance and accounting. Our court operations is funded by the state. Our recording department is a fee office, and so there are many other pieces. When we publish our overall budget, it'll be much higher than $829,000 in total. Currently, our budget is $2.2 million, so you get an idea of how small, it's less than 50% of our overall budget is funded by you. So court is Court is just under $800,000 as well. And so this is only part of the picture of the overall clerk's budget.
You said 800 for the court, 778 for us, and the rest would be fees, about
Court is
roughly.
Our current estimated budget for court is $757,000. We're asking for, it's actually $832, so we had to tweak one more thing. The $829 is $832 now. The fee office, recording, and administration is $342,000. We have a child support grant for $115,000, and then two trust funds, records modernization, $145,000 between the two. So that's your $2.2 million that you'll see advertised if nothing else changes.
Again, this does not include the compensation study.
And that does not include the compensation study. That's correct.
Qualifiers, so I'm interested to see what the other ones did.
Right. Overall, if we were to adopt the 2.2 that I have here as an estimate without compensation study, it's an overall 7.2% increase over the prior year budget, which was $2,053,000. So, pretty much right in line with what you'd see in that request. Any questions?
I don't know if this is a question or a comment, but when you talk about internal audits, is that one of those things like when I call you up to ask you about another agency or paper trails, or I just want everybody to be on the same page about what you are telling us an internal audit would be?
Internal audit is intended to schedule reviews of various county offices.
Okay.
Including the clerk's office. They would be independent of the finance office. They would be independent of the accounting office. They would answer directly to me, and I would not direct their scope of work. They would sit down at the beginning of every year, do a risk assessment, and say, this year we're going to review Road and Bridge, and we're going to do an audit of how Road and Bridge operates, and are they following county policy on what you've directed them to do? Maybe it's a issue of reviewing cash procedures, internal controls on certain risks. They will determine those things. And
Safety meetings, are they doing their safety meetings?
it's not. It doesn't have to be financial driven. It can be policy driven as well.
So
That'll be covering all the constitutional officers.
it would not.
County employee anymore.
It would not cover constitutional officers. There's an AGO opinion that prohibits the clerk's office from auditing constitutional officers. Only one set of eyes sees the constitutional officer's books, and that's your external auditor.
Not internal, he literally means internal. That's what I want to make sure of.
It's county only. Now, I'm going to authorize them to look at the clerk's office. Every other constitutional could do the same thing voluntarily, but I can't demand to walk in and look at their books. But I'm definitely going to, as the clerk, authorize them to look at our functions as well.
Good thing to talk about next year.
I'm going to ask for it this year. You can say no, and we'll have 1 year of no's under our belt already.
Oh, it was 2 hours.
Well, we still have an hour and a half left, so it's okay. I mean,
1/10 of the
Mr. Property Appraiser, would you like to speak on your budget request?
Good afternoon. Looks bad up there. I'm asking for a 26% increase.
27 if you average it, I mean.
Okay. Round it up. Well, from here I round down, you guys round up, so, and I understand the concept. I will tell you that last year's budget, was done in a hurry by people who did not know what they were doing, bluntly. It was, the property appraiser was removed from office, and then somebody who wasn't used to doing the budget was suddenly responsible for the budget. He hired an outside CPA firm, dumped it all on their lap, and I think they did a very, very good job to get done what they got done. However, they didn't cover everything. This also includes 2 new vehicles. The property appraiser has 5 vehicles. Our newest vehicle is a 2005. The two 2005s, one has 146,000 plus, and the other one has 130,000 plus miles on it. We're needing some. Now we've also got a 2003 and two 2004 vehicles. So we're getting to the point where we need some new vehicles.
Does that be funded out of general fund, or could that be 1 cent sales tax?
We talked about that, and it's potentially facilities, 1 cent facilities. There's just a lot of asks in the 1 cent facilities right now.
Gotcha.
Randy, we literally were talking about that, and I don't even, bluntly, I don't even know, I'm just giving you my whole budget, and then where Randy brings the money from, I don't care. Honestly, I suspect we could get by buying 1 truck this year, but we have got to start upgrading the fleet. We've got to start doing that. Otherwise, we're going to end up with some trucks that just aren't on the road. I'll tell you, when I took office, one of the vehicles, it would not start. I had to get a tow truck to come get it and take it to the maintenance facility and get it fixed. So we definitely are beginning to need some trucks. A large part of this, the computer-assisted mass appraisal system, it's called a camera system that we use, is using circa 1970 technology to operate on. It needs to be upgraded. It needed to be upgraded several years ago. I actually think it was in the budget, from what I can gather from the budget of 2 years ago. I think it was in the budget 2 years ago, and it just never was implemented. And that's $175,000, $200,000 out of next year's budget that I'm asking for. So that's a big part of the increase. It's a one-time expense, which should be good for the next 15 or 20 years.
I'm sorry, Ed, is that something the revenue stabilization, these one-time capital costs, can we pay for that other revenue stabilization?
Yes, we can.
Instead of, so,
I actually have asked the vendor if they could stretch out the payments for that, and they've agreed to stretch it into a couple of fiscal years. So this is the entire cost. We may be able to stretch that out a little bit as we get closer and continue to manipulate the budget.
here's the million-dollar question. Does this include the compensation study?
I have not seen the compensation package. However, no one in our office makes less than $15 an hour. So this does include we had multiple people in our offices that had exactly the same duty description and duty title that had widely varying salaries. This does include trying to level this out so that there's some sort of rhyme or reason, and not just someone says, hey, yeah, come on, I'll hire you for this amount. There's going to be some, this is what this position pays versus just what I want to pay.
If I remember correctly, the compensation study didn't hit his office that bad, right? It wasn't a big number.
No, I know. That or none of the constitutions other than us and the sheriff.
So the compensation study, as far as constitutions are concerned, is not a huge issue.
It's not, and that's what I was saying earlier. Everybody's got a different situation. He doesn't have anybody making less than 15. The clerk's office has 3, I think. Tax collector has 1 or 2, and so everybody's in a little different position right now.
Well, it makes me feel better about Ed's knowing a lot of that is one-time capital expenses that possibly we could pay for and not have to, you know what I'm looking at, Ed, you usually look at it too. I see 2.4 mils on that screen.
I know.
But if we could pay for things, especially capital costs, out of another fund instead of ad valorem.
Right.
I don't know if half of his ask came out of the stabilization fund.
Exactly.
He's only getting a 13% increase.
It sounds like more than half his ask is capital costs.
Well over half my ask.
So that number might be 6%, I don't know, whatever.
It'll be, if I took out the capital costs, and another, I'm asking for $25,000 to upgrade my facilities. The carpet in there is 15 years old, and I don't know if you guys have walked through there. But we got a facility there that's, well used.
I would separate the operational increases out from the one-time capital
We can certainly do that.
expenditures.
And I have that format from him. This is just showing the total ask right here.
If operational means taxes, other stuff means paperwork.
This is the year that you're right, Commissioner, we're gonna have to look at every single thing and parse it out where it needs to be, so that we don't overburden taxpayers.
So that's
I feel a lot better now than when you first stood up.
okay. Thank you.
Mr. Sheriff, and there's a revised budget request that I received after the presentation, and it's a little different format, but it's basically a comparison of the current fiscal year budget by department to what they've asked for the next.
Glad to see it's a decrease. It's good.
It's a decrease from this year to next year, but it's higher than what his original
Yeah,
request was,
it's-
which is why I
It's not a
provided it to you.
decrease. It shows a decrease, but it's not.
I like the decrease.
I'm not going to give you the degree. I'm a little different than Ed, but I can tell you 42% of our office is under $15 an hour. Now, our dispatchers start at $24,000 a year. Our starting deputies start at $31,000 a year. That is less than $15 an hour.
Right there at it, though.
$31,200 is $15 an hour. So our starting deputies are making less than $15 an hour. So with that in mind, that's most of our increase is coming from raising our deputies' pay. It's long overdue. Our starting deputies are making $31,000 a year. It's not a secret. I've said this over and over for several years that's my number one goal is to get the deputies a raise, and we've got to do it.
The main components of yours are making up for ice, and you did adopt the compensation study into your ask.
Yes. Yes.
The ice hole is a big deal too, and that's included in there.
Yeah, and we lost the ice, but we still have a medical contract with to keep the prisoners, and that went down, but it also we still have to provide the care for the inmates, so it's not it's cut it in half almost, but
The 17% will fix the hole in the ice, and
20% now.
it's 20%.
21, yep. It's
Negative.
It's $2 million. Well, it's a $2 million increase in what the transfer from the BOCC needs to provide the sheriff.
Then you'll get rid of the cash forward, right?
Yep, the cash forward, we're no longer going to be using it for equipment and facilities. It's just going to be to fund a contingency for them each year. So if we bring $300,000 forward in cash, they have a $300,000 contingency.
That's really the number we're gonna have to figure out how to come up with. That's new taxes.
That's the big hole we talked about.
New taxes.
Just make sure everybody's clear on that.
So, Sheriff, like I asked Brandy, it sounds like the compensation study would get you above the 15? Is that
A
right?
lot more than 15 of it.
Okay.
Like I said, 42% of our office is under 15 right now.
And if we didn't have the 15, if we implement the compensation study, that solves the 15 for you?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, even without the study, I mean, this is long overdue. This is, before Jerry was sheriff and now the sheriff is the same thing. We're way behind the ball. We've lost, over the last probably 6 years, probably 30, Jerry, probably 30 officers, sheriff, more. The Leon County TPD and state attorneys, they come here, they get a year experience and they're gone. And I'm a firm believer that you pay for good people, you keep them here. And I think it's way past time. I think it's 6 years ago we should have been up to this already. So
Gotta pay for it.
Well, I think that's the good thing about the compensation study, is it shows us where that line
And
is.
it's done with other counties that are like us, not Aid County or something.
So you're going to basically reduce your loss, okay, of personnel, so that you'll save on training costs then?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. I think we've been very fortunate to get the people that we have at the Wakulla County Sheriff's Office. I think we provide a good service to this community, and to keep this service, this level of service, we can't keep paying $31,000 a year. It's just not. You can go to the Easy Serve and make $15 an hour sometimes.
You can stay home and make that.
Yeah, so it's past time. I know it's hard decisions for y'all, and everybody needs something, but I need this. I gotta have it. The deputies deserve it, correction officers deserve it, and we've got to do it, so now's the time. Thank you.
thanks, Sheriff.
Thank you. No questions for Jan?
Mr. Supervisor Elections, you're up.
36%, Joe. Please tell me yours is all capital also.
Yeah, I wish I could. Unfortunately, if you've been involved in canvassing, unfortunately, you know pretty much where we're at with everything. First of all, good afternoon. Thank you guys for, listening to everything that we've got to say here this afternoon. There are some things that we are behind on. One of the things that I looked at is our employees. So we're a lot different than any of the other offices, as we don't have that many employees, right? So one of the things that I asked for was an additional employee. And so why did I ask for an additional employee? So one of the things that we have to be very mindful of, and Brandy touched on it at the very beginning, which was cybersecurity, right? That is probably one of the biggest issues that we have to contend with in elections at this point. Case in point, Colonial Pipeline, and we'll just stop it right there. Things happen, and we have to be prepared for it. And so what I was looking at trying to do with my budget is putting in a part-time person for IT. Now, we do have Inspired Technologies, which technically they're not on staff, but they kind of are. I mean, if that makes sense.
They were there every election.
They are there every election, but the problem is that any other time outside of that is you pick up the phone and call, and you have to wait for X amount of time whenever things start happening. My conversation with Inspired has basically led to, you can't hire a number 3 tiered IT specialist for the type of money that they're charging, and they went up on us dramatically last year, from about $7,000 a year all the way up to $42,000 a year. And the expense on that was basically, or the spend on that was basically saying that, we've let you guys get away for so long without charging. Now we've got to start recouping some of our cost. And so that's basically what was said. So we have to, we've obviously had to catch up with that. Now, obviously, we pay for a lot of this stuff with grant money. There is grants that come down the pipe, but as you know, grant money is only as good as whenever you receive it, right? Until you get it, it's no good. It's all, it's all on paper. So About 50% of my increase here is also going to be for salaries and also one other person. And I did include the cost analysis. And what I've done is I've done my own. I've been around 2 other counties. I've been communicating with the majority of all of our of my colleagues from around the state and what they pay, and we're grossly underpaid here for what the same positions actually pay for. So with that being said, that's about 50% of the increase of what I have is in my salaries. The other, there's about 28% of my increase is based off of the numbers with contractual services. I've broken my office down into 4 different categories. And so with operational expenses, I mean, we basically stay the same, but elections is always going to change. This year holds a little bit extra to it as it's redistricting year. So we're waiting on the Senate to pull down everything so that we start, knowing where we're going at with redistricting. Well, how does that affect me outside of the lines of, putting it on a map and drawing lines, right? Well, unfortunately, everything has to be reprinted. People are moving into different precincts, obviously districts, and so all of these cards have to be, printed up and sent out. Now, why is that important? Well, we've got over 23,000 voters, and I'll let you do the math real quick on 55 cents whenever you get ready to mail all this stuff out. You're already at $11,500 just with sending out if we go with 23,000. And every one of my colleagues around the state, we've talked about this, and every single one of them has absolutely included every single voter on their mail-outs. Now, we may not go that way. We may not have to do that. And obviously, we're not going to know that until after redistricting is over with. So the funds could come down dramatically.
When the redistricting comes in, the notifications you send, those are a one-time notification, right?
That is a one-time deal.
That's
Correct.
That's almost like a capital expense also.
Yep, that is correct. So, and then also our printing. Printing this year is going through the roof, and we're going out checking everybody that we possibly can, to get the best prices that we possibly can. In fact, I'm sitting down tomorrow, as a matter of fact, with Inspired, because I'm dead serious about this. But again, I have to be really, I have to be as diligent as I possibly can be whenever it comes to elections, because again, elections is never important until you're on the front page and it's negative, correct? So we're not interested in going that route. So that's about 75%, and then of course we have our poll workers that work. Again, we're talking about doing our own cost analysis throughout the state. Our poll workers make $140 a day for our clerks. Anywhere else across the state, they typically range anywhere from $175 to $300 a day. So if you start doing that, I mean, we've got 70 to 75 poll workers that come in. I mean, your money starts going up, if you start paying them. All I've done with mine was I went up about $25, $20 to $25. I tried to put them up at $200, but I did go up on those as well.
That's only every 2 years, though, right?
That is every 2 years. Well, so it's almost every budget cycle, because so in a presidential year you have 3 elections. So there's 2 elections that will come in on that one budget cycle, and then you'll have another election on another budget cycle. So we have to keep that in mind for every election cycle. And so the last thing is I did also add a 2% increase on our retirement, which obviously now talking with Brandy, that probably isn't going to be nowhere near enough. But I did go with a 2% increase on all of that, which equaled out to just a little over $8,000. From that aspect of it. So with mine, yes, it is a big increase, but understand it's also the smallest budget that we've got in our county as far as the amount of dollars that we have per voter. Right now, we're at about $14 per voter, and that is almost the cheapest throughout the state. Just about everybody, if you go to any other county and you do an analysis per voter, you're typically going to be somewhere between $25 and $45 per voter in each one of those counties. And obviously, services are going to dictate how you come up with those dollars. So with the more people that we have moving in here, obviously that's going to require us for more services. And that's one of the reasons why I'm asking for another position. Thank you for your time. Any questions?
Does this number include the added position?
Yes, sir, it does. Yes, sir.
I didn't hear any equipment cost in there.
I'm glad you brought that up. So me and Brandy got together and we did purchase a one-time deal. We purchased a DS450, which
That's the scanner for scanning the ballots?
Yes,
Good.
I want you guys, I just got off the phone this morning with the S&S, and I will absolutely send out a invite to each one of you guys so y'all can come over and witness how this thing operates. It is absolutely going to just change the way that we do canvassing at night. We're no longer in the days of 8 to 10 hour days for canvassing. That's ridiculous. We're fixing to 1.5 to 2 hour days for canvassing. We're not sitting back.
Feeder?
Yes, it is.
Chuck doesn't have to stand there.
See,
I've already with this one anytime.
those days are over with, and I think that comes back to services. The more people we get, obviously, the more equipment that you need to have to be more efficient in the office. And honestly, that's really my goal, is to be as efficient as we possibly can be, because our voters deserve that. But also, I know that we have to be careful with the money. And I said that whenever I was running my campaign, that I'm going to be as frugal as I possibly can be, and I will be, and I'll continue to be that way. But I think that our voters, they've talked really loud to us over the last year or so, and we've got to do something different. And so, therefore, I'm trying to implement those plans.
Words of Barack Obama, the election's over and you won.
All righty then.
Hey,
I have a question when you get done.
Go ahead.
Did you say that you did your own compensation study, so you weren't going with ours? Wow.
I did do my own.
Okay. So are they going together? Are they going to be compared, or you don't care?
I will compare. I
Okay.
absolutely will compare. So what I did, and Mike said it just a while ago, and I think this holds true with business. And a lot of entrepreneurs that I've talked to, they say this is the cost of doing business. But ultimately, if you want good people, you better pay them.
Yeah.
Because if you don't, they're gone.
I agree with 100%.
And I think that we're seeing that all across the board. Right now, I think there's a tremendous work shortage, and I think everybody knows this. But if you want good people, you got to pay for them. And I can assure you, I know for sure, I've got some pretty good workers over there in my office, and I ain't interested in losing them. Not before an election. Not at all.
I got one more question. Apparently, this is interesting to me today. The $7,000 a year to $42,000 a year, that was no warning, like just here's your bill?
Correct. Yep, Mr. Buddy. Now, and you have to keep in mind, this is prior to me coming up. So they sat down with Mr. Buddy, and this was kind of the tidbit pieces that I got from David. I didn't get this from Mr. Buddy, I got this from David. And David said that essentially what he did was he sat down with Mr. Buddy and told him that because Inspired has roughly 10 or 12 different counties that they use that they help with on the elections, on election night and so forth. And so basically what they said was, we've undercharged you guys for the past several years. And so now we've got to kind of, come up to speed with what we've got.
That doesn't smell right, does it?
No, but
So that's essentially what happened, and that did basically happen overnight. Yes.
Are they the only company that does that stuff? Who does,
No, they are not.
who does Leon County use, for example?
So Leon actually, Mark has his own in-house IT staff.
does?
Mark Early does, yes. And the majority of your larger counties, which Leon is now considered, the counties supervisors are broke down in 3 different categories: small, medium, large. Imagine that. And Leon has just moved over to the large status, and basically what they do, the larger counties, they in-house all their IT so that they don't have to worry about anything going outside. Certainly, I'd love to do that, but
No, we
it
can't.
just doesn't make sense. At this point in the juncture, we couldn't afford it.
Who is
being
it?
just-
Franklin County,
What's that?
County, these other small counties?
So-
Are they
so-
expired?
Yeah, no, they do not. I've talked to several of my local touching counties here. Matter of fact, I talked to Jennifer Kinsey on Friday in Swanee County. Her, Travis Hart, Taylor County, Travis and Lafayette, Taylor County, Union County, Miss Debbie. There's about 8 counties that use one other guy. And my understanding is they're really a lot less expensive than what Inspired
Hate to
is.
lose Nick, but I mean,
Well, at the end of the day, I mean, it's the cost of doing business, right? So, I mean, we've got to look at everything, and obviously, this is a year that we've got to look at everything. And so, do you give up quality, for what other people may have to offer? And also, there's a trust issue, because again, this is, whenever you start talking about cybersecurity, I mean, you're only as good as the last word that you said about cybersecurity, so.
I think Quincy's point, they're going from $7,000 to $42,000 in one swoop just seems a little.
And it could be purely based on miscommunication, so.
It could be,
We can-
but those are conversations that I wasn't privy to,
Exactly.
so I don't know. All I can do is go by, they say numbers don't lie, so at the end of the day, it went from about $7,000 to $42,000. And whenever I got the bill, I literally, I'm not gonna lie, I almost fell out of the chair. Because that is a lot of money.
Sit down.
I've talked to David several times. But matter of fact, like I said, I've got a meeting set up with him week after next on this.
Not me.
Not David Edward, David with Inspired.
Inspired does our in-house, BOCC,
And they also did the sheriff department as well, yeah.
and did they have a big increase for those departments? Just the supervisor? You just take the
I got a feeling there was probably something in the
Miscommunication.
story.
We can have to do whatever we can, I mean, because I mean, honestly, this is, whenever I got it, because to be honest, whenever I first started going over the budget, and I saw the numbers don't jive. With what Mr. Buddy turned in and what is being charged, they don't jive, period. They just don't jive. And I've been over and talked to Brandy several times about this, because whenever numbers don't jive, something's going on somewhere, and I got to figure it out. And so this is where I'm at. I mean, I'm exploring all options at this point, but my ultimate goal is to make sure that Wakulla County is safe and secure. And that will be my goal, continue moving forward, for sure. Any other questions?
One of the things we need to take care of at some point is, we need to develop a budget for the canvassing. That's especially, maybe not this year, but for next budget year, going into that election, we need a budget.
I've talked to some colleagues of mine about stuff like that, and there are some counties that do that, and certainly that is something that we can look into. I hope that, obviously we always hope we're not going into lawsuits, but that is something that we can visit for sure.
We can carve some of your budget and put it over there.
Yeah, absolutely.
to make it a line item within his budget.
More money. Yeah.
But no, that is something that we need to really look at, because this is showing, we need that segregation, that separation.
I totally agree with that, especially after this year. I mean,
After this year.
Yes, sir.
Put a contingent amount of money in there, a reserve or something, not actually be.
Well, we need to be able to properly account for it, that it was canvassing board. But also, I'll be sending you and other, constitutionals, we had to scrub the compensation study, and we're still scrubbing. And I think Debbie maybe I've talked to y'all, I know she's domestic y'all, but we'll be sending that to you, so I'd take a look at that and see, because that did take in all the local counties our size, et cetera. So that's-
I'll definitely, I'm all about that.
We're all trying to follow the same methodology and trying to walk down the same path. That way it's level and equal for everybody, all county employees.
I agree. Yes, sir. Absolutely. Absolutely. Any other questions? Thank y'all again for hearing us out today.
Miss Tax Collector?
Afternoon.
After
All
that.
right. There's, 5 different things that make up the increase that I've requested. The first one is Cheryl was under the drop program, so that was a significantly less retirement contribution that we paid out each month because she was in drop. Now that she's retired, that has gone up significantly, so I'm looking at needing $41,300 just because we no longer have an elected official that's in the drop program. I did do a COLA. I haven't seen the pay study, but I did go ahead and do a COLA on what our employees currently are at. With the COLA increase, the retirement system and the payroll taxes, that's right around $12,400. CHP, I did do 5%. I did do 5% on CHP, so that's 91.95. And then in the past budget years, probably the last 6, 7, maybe 8, roughly $40,000 was always pulled from driver's license fees before we turned them over to the county to help fund driver's license since we took it over in 2009. I no longer want to do it that way. I want to turn all the fees over to the county that we collect and actually have that money already in the budget that we receive every year, instead of pulling that from fees.
So it's not an actual increase, we're gonna have revenue to offset
Right.
that. Now, are you gonna have anybody below 15 an hour
I
after?
have 2 people right now below 15, so even with the COLA, that doesn't get them up to the
So
15.
that's still not a major impact, not 2 people.
But that's the way to do it. I mean, that's the way to do it.
So we have an increase on the funding side and an increase on the
That's right.
spending side. So
Exactly.
they offset each other.
Don't
So
pay.
your number's probably more
I'll
like,
pay the telephone bill out of the electric account.
And then the remaining is, I really need to hire 2 more positions. So that's the remaining of what I'm looking at. Just because we're being overwhelmed with not only the amount of citizens that are increasing for our county, but all the other counties that are sending their citizens here, because most of the surrounding counties are doing appointment only.
Is that what we're still doing here? If you're out of Wakulla
We're
County?
out of county, but we've kind of relaxed that, and we've added more appointments so that we can get more people in. Just
is
because
for-
the last couple of weeks, we've slowed down a little bit, but it's getting ready to pick back up.
this is for driver's license tags, stuff like that, right?
Is there anything
Hunting, fishing, concealed.
sealed?
Do you think once the COVID whatever is gone, that the demand is gonna drop way down?
I don't think so, because I've talked to Leon County, and they say that they are going to continue with appointments only.
Do we get a fee for that service? So it kind of
It
pays for
comes to
itself,
us. Right, it comes to us.
or at least
I
generates
talked to
revenue?
Gadsden County, they said they're probably going to stick with appointments only and continue to only help their residents. I haven't heard back from Franklin County, I don't know what they're doing, but for the most part, Wakulla County and Jefferson County are the only 2 offices that are taking in other county.
But that does generate revenue.
Your 2 people increase too, is that considering the $15 an hour too in your budget?
Yes.
That extra revenue that comes from these out-of-county people, does it pay for itself?
Does it pay for itself?
The amount of work it takes to process the application, how much you give as a fee,
Not always. Not always, and that's one reason why we limited it there for a while, because it wasn't cost-effective, and our citizens were being penalized, because they were having to stand in a long line, wait forever, and they were getting agitated because they couldn't get service.
So I can go in right now, but if somebody's coming from Tallahassee, they need to make an appointment, and that's worked out.
Right,
And who sets the fee for what we charge out-of-county people?
the state DMV.
So we
they
can't
have-
raise it.
They have set fees for. The only way we could add anything additional is we could add a 50-cent branch fee, but that's only if we had a second office. With just one office, DMV won't let us add a
Smith
branch
Creek
fee.
office.
Do you have to process for out-of-county people?
Do we have to?
Yeah.
We don't have to. But we have a lot of people from Leon County that maybe work down here, or for whatever reason, they have their children in school down here. Probably they're using somebody else's address, so we do try to accommodate them, because if they're working down here, whether it's at a bank or whether it's in one of the other county offices, I mean, it's only convenient to help them if they're here anyway.
Does it cover the cost?
I mean, Heather's right, we're doing it out of the goodness of our heart, basically. It's not covering the cost. If you didn't have that out-of-county stuff, would you need these 2 people?
We would possibly need, we could drop it down to 1, but our county is growing so much that,
Yeah, I understand. I'm just saying, if you got rid of the out-of-county service, which we may need to take a hard look at that. I mean, taxpayers are paying for the convenience of people that live in Franklin, Gadsden, Leon County, basically.
we which is why we moved it to appointments, and we were doing 10 a day, and then we dropped it down because we were still so busy with our county residents.
Wow.
But we're kind of playing around with if we can raise it back up
Or you could do it just one day a week, right?
1 day a week. If they come in and do a simple tag renewal, then no, it doesn't pay for itself. If they come in and do a title transfer or get their driver's license, buy hunting and fishing license, then it does end up paying for itself. But if they come in and do one tag renewal, that's $2.50, which if it's a simple tag renewal, that's okay. But a lot of times they need their proof of insurance. They might not have it. So then they've held up the line because we've got to wait for them to get proof of insurance, and that $2.50 just went out the window.
Got it.
That is mine. Any questions?
Question? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Go to keep going. The next two slides, I've handed that out to you. That's the revised sheriff's budget that you have up there. We're not going to pick on the sheriff's budget anymore. I think everybody understands the situation. So we'll cruise through this pretty quick because we have some MSBU information to present. But basically, in the current year, our millage rate is 8 mills. Our PSC is at 7, just so everybody for the public and the board knows where we are. We're expecting to get an estimate from the property appraiser on June 1st of the values. Looking at previous year's increases, and your total taxable values for operating purposes is going to include your existing plus your new construction. We've looked at about a 6% to 8% increase over the last 3 years. And so, as David mentioned, because we know there's been a lot of adjustments in the property appraiser's office, they've looked at the tangible personal property, they've looked at valuations. We're just not confident in making a projection of what that valuation is going to be, and so we're going to hold off and wait till we get an estimate for June 1st from the property appraiser. All right, go to MSBU.
Let me ask you one other question too. When will we know about the CHP increase too? I mean, when does that usually come out so we'll know? Because, I mean, we do this study, we get, which I don't think we make any decisions on. I mean, I know this is just giving us a basic rundown, but, you know, we need to look at the study. I know there were some numbers we had to work out with when we get to finish that nail down. You know, you look at the proposal from the property appraiser, and then we send an increase in the CHP. You know, if we can work that out, I mean, all those things need to be taken back so you can even make any decisions to be made. So, and if you do the study and you say you're moving $15 higher, but CHP goes up, that makes, you know, why am I you're gonna give them a raise and you're gonna take it right back by taking CHP goes up for whatever percent. So that's something we really need to look on.
It's usually mid to late July when we have from our broker, the information about our insurance rates, and obviously that's something we're going to look at, and definitely it's not a decision that's been made, but it's a math calculation that has to be made.
And there's still no way, which I understand, you know, each one of us different, 80%, 90% with the sheriff's office. There's still no way that we can fall under one CHP and everybody can get a better rate with CHP.
We do fall under.
Well, I'm talking about even like with the school system too, which they don't fall under. We're in a much bigger pool than that. We're in a much bigger pool with the school system. Okay.
Much bigger. I asked that when I first got it.
Okay, so I mean, it seemed like if we could all combine into one, we could get a better rate through CHP to make it easier on the people that work for us.
Yeah, and the only difference is just some of our elected officers just apply it differently to their employees.
I got you.
Okay, now we've improved our loss ratio, which has made a difference as well in our...
Right, because the less losses, then the better rate they give us.
Well, the CHP still pays out more than we pay in, right?
Not necessarily, that's the reason ours has improved.
Because we have a better loss rate.
Last year...
They were losing money.
Last year, we paid them more than they...
That's the first time that's happened in a long time.
All right?
Sorry,
Right.
go ahead.
That's all.
The last time we looked at the apportionment for fire call data was May 1st of 2009 to April 30th of 2010. And so that was set our MSBU from 11-12 on to 16-17 when we made the adjustment to our almost current rate now. And so it was definitely time to look at that apportionment again. You'll see up there on the screen, this is just the actual fire call data that they use, the recent data. And so it breaks it down by category as far as what is residential, commercial. We have added that industrial warehouse, new category that you spoke about, barns, and then institutional and vacant land. So this is going to be our data that we use to develop our new apportionment. And next slide. And then just so you know, this is our current rates on the category, the column on the left, 2021. Our residential is 102, and then our commercial is just under 12 cents per square foot, and then these are the vacant land, about 22 cents, and then our industrial warehouse is just under 12 cents. The column on the right is looking at the possibly proposed. These are just one scenario. We're still looking at this. As far as basically the residential is the largest amount you collect from the homeowners, and it's $131 proposed. We're going to talk real quick with Louie and Kelly, and they're going to dive into what all this entails as far as the additional shifts. I don't know how you want to do this because it's in a different... Jessica.
She's got it under control. She's got it under control. You can't. All right, Cal, this is you. This is how you ask for money. Y'all watch this. This is how you ask for money.
She developed this, she did a great job once, so I'm gonna let her handle
Well, here.
And I'll be here for questions.
So, oh, you ain't gonna drive for me? Just forward.
It's on the right side.
Forward, back. Okay, I got it. All right, so surprise, we're gonna be asking for more money as well this year, to add staff. We want a budget increase to add staffing. Thank you. And hopefully this will illustrate the need for that. Demand for fire rescue services is increasing. Engine calls increased by 35% in 2020 over 2019, and first quarter 21 engine calls have increased another 19% over that so far, monthly average. Calls at the same time, the calls for ambulance services are up 15% in 21, averaging 384 ambulance calls per month. In all, we responded to 4,413 ambulance calls and 822 engine calls in the past 12 months. Fires by property type, as Brandy showed us, fires happen in homes. The growth that we're seeing overall in calls is mainly coming from residential fires, and as the building boom continues, we expect to see this increase keep up. Fire engine crews respond to many types of calls, not just fires. The MSBU study only looks at fire events. That's what they give us credit for, but those only account for 17% of the total calls that the engine goes to. The remaining 83% are for vehicle crashes, citizen complaints, public assist calls, that sort of thing. These staff, 12 personnel on a shift right now. We've got the 1 battalion chief, 4 ambulance crews, and 1 fire engine crew. We've got an ambulance in Medart, 1 in Wakulla Station, and then we've got 2 ambulances, the fire truck in Crawfordville, centrally located. All the staff are dual certified. They're firefighters and paramedics or EMT. They do double duty. They respond to fires as well as ambulance calls, but only 3, the engine crew is dedicated to fire protection. Wakulla County Fire Rescue has not increased staffing in the past 10 years. In the same time, the population of the county has grown by 18%. Our resource allocation is based on call volume. We talked about we have a lot more ambulance calls. We have an average of 13 ambulance calls a day, but only 3 engine calls. 59% of those ambulance calls result in a transport to the hospital. Each transport is a round trip of about 50 miles and takes those two personnel out of the county for almost 2 hours. In the past 16 months, we have run out of ambulances 173 times. On 173 different days, we received word from dispatch, all units are busy, no more coverage. In 38 of those instances, we continued to receive calls and we had to activate a fifth ambulance, which basically means we pulled the firefighters off the fire engines, put them on an ambulance and sent them to calls, leaving no fire protection in the county. National Fire Protection Standards recommend a response of 10 firefighters for a single-family house fire, but the bare minimum coverage is 4 firefighters, 2 in, 2 out is the rule. When we do have a fire, we send every available unit, all the ambulance crews, all the engine crews, everybody that we have. But it's not uncommon for EMS crews to be engaged already, and it's also not uncommon for them to be pulled off of a fire to have to respond to EMS calls.
So the 173, that's a number of days?
Number of times.
It's the number of instances.
Maybe 3 times in one day.
Right, it never averages out clean, it happens in waves.
Gotcha.
We used to rely heavily on volunteer firefighters, but in part due to higher training and certification standards and also decreased interest, volunteerism is falling. We currently have 13 on the roster, but less than 9 active in any given month on average. We only received 3 volunteer applications in the past year, and only 1 of those qualified to join. ISO rating is an important factor in determining homeowners' insurance rates. Currently, we hold a 5.5x ISO rating, which is exceptional for a rural county. They look at fire department staffing, training, where your fire stations are, water supply, that kind of thing. But the biggest component is staffing and resources in relation to population density. We have a couple of bright spots. Water supply is doing great with the new neighborhoods. They're having plenty of hydrants get put in. We get lots of credit for that. And we're also currently undertaking the project to improve our emergency communication system, which we also get points for. We are due for inspection this year. And then the last component that I look at is a fire prevention program, which we hope to address. We went over the MSBU study looking at apportionment. The rate proposal that Brandy showed is scenario 2. So we asked them for 3 rate scenarios. Number 1, status quo, pull in, generate the same amount of revenue, just correct the apportionment if necessary. Number 2, enhanced services. We want to add some personnel. And then number 3 was enhanced services plus capital. That would generate substantially more revenue, and it would be to fund capital expenditures, one-time expenditures, fire trucks, that kind of thing. Currently, that comes out of 1-cent sales tax. We are asking for, staff is going to recommend scenario 2. We want to add another full-time engine company to provide additional fire protection and backup. And then we also want to add a fire inspector position. That will allow us to develop a community outreach and prevention program. We'd like to include annual fire inspections for businesses. That's something that really could help our ISO rating. These enhancements would not be fully funded by the MSBU. They would need to be matched through the general fund.
Was that included in your budget?
If approved, the new engine company would be stationed in Medart, would serve the southern end of the county. It would increase our overall staffing by about 17%, but it would almost double our fire protection available to the county. That's it.
What was the option 3 cost?
Do you remember?
6 for residential.
It was a pretty good jump.
Well, we're proposing what, 131?
134, 131, somewhere in there, yeah.
So we'll go from 134 to what, 140 what? 46.
Reapportionment took residential to 126.
That was gonna be my
Just if it stayed the same, reapportionment took it to 126, the same revenue. But adding the shift took it on up to the 134,
What is the
136.
capital component added to it?
Capital we put it up in the 140 and the line, yeah.
49, so $47 increase over the current.
Because we were using jail bed revenue for that, which is gone. So we're leaning real heavy on that 1 cent sales tax now.
Well, and we were using the jail bed revenue, sheriff was buying all of his vehicles, which he has a huge fleet, out of his, we were contributing some, but out of 1 cent, but he was buying it all out of the jail bed. Now that's ended, so it's gonna shift back to 1 cent, so we've gotta have a funding source for fire now. And, but we're not ready yet to ask you guys, if you wanna fund it, that's fine, but we're not asking you for that yet because we wanna see how everything works itself out next year with the sheriff's office as we grow, et cetera, and make sure that when we come to you with an ask, we know exactly what we need and exactly how much it's gonna cost.
Whatever we can find out of 1 cent sales tax, not put on ad valorem tax. Hard to do.
Yeah, and that's what we're trying to do. That's the reason we're not asking for it. Could we use it? Yes, but we want to let this thing shake itself out for a year.
I'm fine with option
And then
2, just like I said, a brief presentation you gave to me that day.
Also, option 1 and 2, it did increase residential just because of the apportionment, but commercial and the new categories actually went down. I think with the third scenario with capital, the commercial and those other ones, and then vacant land would also go up significantly.
I think that's important for everybody to understand that even if we just did reapportionment, all right, it's still at 120-something.
That's where the calls are.
We're basically asking for $12 more a year.
29.
Right. 1 or 2.
Almost.
131.
There you
But
go.
what if we did reapportionment, is what I'm saying?
126, right?
No, 131.
It's $29.
Talking about reapportionment, just
If we did reapportionment,
area 1,
Oh, 116.
116.
so it's the difference between 116, so you're here in realistic terms asking for an extra $14. Because no matter what we do, we're gonna do reapportionment.
Yeah, it's either, yeah, and like I say, the biggest thing is here is life safety, number 1. But number 2 is your ISO, because we skip up to a 77X. You're gonna have people screaming about their house insurance because it's gonna jump up significantly, and all of a sudden that 12 cent or $12 a year looks awfully cheap.
I mean, that's what it boils down to, is we're asking citizens to pay an extra $12 a year.
Yeah.
To get an extra fire truck in Meadow, which you'd see it,
Yep.
and, this fire inspector to get more ISO points, basically.
I'm also
I think it's
curious,
reasonable.
I'm also curious too, I meant to ask you this the other day. I know the sheriff's office is accredited in 3 categories. Are y'all accredited or seeking to do that? Because that also makes a huge difference on insurance, and you'd be able to qualify for grants and stuff more by being accredited. So I didn't know if are y'all accredited?
We're not accredited right now, and there's not many fire departments in the U.S. that are. Arizona is Phoenix, in Miami. So we're probably not there yet. We wouldn't meet the criteria. The department would have to be a lot larger.
Yeah.
Okay.
We looked at it, and it's just no way we can get there.
I wanted to when I first stood up.
Okay, I was just curious. I never know, I know, like I said, with the sheriff's office, I mean, we're, accredited, so I'm just curious about the fire department. I meant to ask you that, but maybe you forgot to ask you.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'm fine with that, by the way, just tell you what I think.
All right. Back to the other one, please, ma'am.
Back to the sewer fund. Roll through this. Yeah, can you prove that? So one of the other studies that we have completed this year is our Reftella sewer rate study. We have typically adjusted the rates annually for a CPI, but this was a comprehensive study that looked at the sufficiency of our revenue in terms of what we have coming down the road and what debt we already have and what those rates need to be. And so they have developed some forecasts for us through 2026. Those forecasts are also used to complete our capital financing plan and then our SRF loan application, which the board approved, I think, at the first meeting in April. So one of the things that we know is that we've had years previously where ESG was improperly allocating the contracted services and the cost to operate the wastewater system.
All the previous operators did the same thing, right, in it?
And
Which was wrong.
Not their fault.
we're looking at this rate study now, and if the costs were being captured accurately all along, we probably would have done something different with our rates, but we were looking at an artificial cost, and so, we're fine, our rates are good, we just need a CPI. And so now that we've had this study and everything, we're looking at potential increases that are maybe a little uncomfortable. Go to the next slide. And this is the result of our Reftella study right here. So part of the issue is we're required to have a certain amount of debt coverage in our operating fund. And so in order to collect that coverage or to maintain that coverage, the proposed rate adjustment, I don't know if this is where it's going to land finally, that they have sent to us in the study is 15% effective April 1st of 2022, and then the 2.5% in the out years moving out. So, like I said, I don't know that this is what we're going to request the board to do at this point, but that is what the study shows.
So you have to cover debt service with operational, it can't be in the access fee account?
You cover the loan with your operating.
That's how you secure your loan, because that's where your recurring...
That fee could go away.
So we're having to build up the reserve in the operational fund.
But we're gonna look at implementing it over probably more than just 1 year. And in fact, we're talking to them about that. But yes, there will be an effect on the monthly operations for coverage.
So why do you have to keep charging the increase every year going down the road if the bill's being paid out of the access fee?
Because you have to guarantee that that's there. And the only way to do that is to put that in the rate. And you can't selectively not charge that. It's just like you have to show where your house mortgage is coming
What
from.
this is doing is putting the cost of the new construction on the backs of the people that are paying their cell bill. And, I was under the impression that we had an enterprise fund so that the development pays for itself, and that's not what this is doing.
It has nothing, it's about loaning and borrowing money.
I understand why, but the dollar, unless at some point this money comes back to the customer, okay, it's basically the customer's funding the new construction.
Yes.
Of the plant.
Of the plant and the whole addition, a piece of the transmission.
They're not subsidizing sewer construction in new subdivisions.
No,
They are subsidizing, I guess you'd say, the increased capacity at the plant and possibly a major force main.
And why should citizens that are already on the system, that we have the capacity to handle their houses, fund the expansion for the new development?
I understand what you're saying, but according to what I'm understanding, this is a fiscal...
Well, that's right. You think about it. Just think about it. How's all USDA and SRF is saying, hey, we're going to loan you $30 million. All right, Ralph, Commissioner, Chairman can tell you this, how you going to guarantee I get that money back? The only guarantee is through monthly rates. So guess what they stick it to? They stick it at that monthly rate, you gotta go. Whether you like it or not, that's just the way it works.
But the monthly rate, okay, will be higher at least once, okay, to get that fund to pay it off. But you should be able to pay the actual bills with the access fee, and the monthly rate doesn't have to stay that.
Yeah, it's got to stay that year over year until it's paid off.
You know, it's not a subject of financing. I have the money, okay? It's a question of who's paying the bill.
Yeah, but it's still, we have to reflect that in the...
Greg is just a minute back there.
Come on, Greg.
Greg can
Explain this to me, Greg.
Before Greg goes, because I know this is going to be lengthy, I just wanted to ask David, Brandy, last week in our 2-hour meetings before this, so in layman terms, this money was not allocated correctly or was not in the proper space for a year based on the USDA loan requirements. So this isn't anything new.
No, it isn't anything new.
It just needs to be moved around.
We wondered why we were making money, and then we found out we were getting wrong information.
And I thought that you had to show those turn income every month for the loan value, for the loan, right?
The loan, that's what you got to
Not the hard cost, but for every month you show you're making this amount to be able to prove for the loan.
It's almost $1 million a year principal and interest. So go ahead, Greg.
David and I fought these guys for meeting after meeting after meeting, arguing the exact same thing you have argued. Trying to illustrate we wanted to keep it in the access fee fund.
And yes, I tried that, Commissioner Hess.
We have tried it. Theoretically, you can do it. You can never borrow money, and you internally fund $22 million worth of capital, and nobody will care where it comes from outside of our community. The moment you want to borrow the money, that banker, that lender wants a guaranteed stream of revenue to ensure that you're going to pay the loan back. And theoretically, access fees can dry up tomorrow and you never have any new construction, you have no way of paying the debt. And so this is the lending function of ensuring you have always. Now what we plan to do, let's assume you adopt this process, is your monthly revenues will now have two components to it, an operating component and a capital component. And that capital component will be moved to the access fee fund to ensure that it is used for what it's intended to use, instead of building up this massive reserve in the operating fund.
Yeah, but my problem is that even though that you're going to move it and move it into the access fee fund, it's still current citizens paying the bill for future development.
You are absolutely correct. And the only way to fix it is never borrow money out of this fund.
So, hang on, Greg. I understand what you're saying.
And we all understand what you're saying. That's just the way the game's played.
So this proposal is not the first time we borrowed money from USDA. This is what we should have been doing all along. This is a USDA requirement.
Your USDA agreement has a debt service component in it already.
So the folks that paid their tap fees and the folks that are paying their bill, that should have already been factored into what they're paying, and we have just missed that.
But see, because the way we're doing this, essentially the current citizens are paying the bill, paying for the access, paying the tap fees for future citizens. Instead of charging the $6,000 it costs us to build that system, we're only going to be charging $4,000. So basically, we're subsidizing development. Now, there's a lot of people in the county that don't want to subsidize development. They like the number of people that are here now.
There's one fault to your logic. The person who moved here 10 years ago, they didn't pay their fair share when they moved here either. It's just been this, keep shoving it.
That started from day one when we borrowed the money.
I'm saying, if you're right, the customer that is here today is subsidizing new customers, but the customer who was here 20 years ago subsidized that person's move here as well. And so you follow me? I think most of no one has paid the actual real amount
of the access. I mean, we're talking about borrowing $30 million, okay, to build this new system, and we're going to charge an access fee of $4,000. There's $2,000 wrong in there somewhere, okay, and that's my problem. If I look at historically, I see that we've built a system that's worth $45 million, but we have no idea how much it actually cost us. And so, because we have so much money that...
We paid 45, that's what it cost us.
No, because it basically, a lot of the developers built their own system and gave it to us.
That's true.
Okay, and so we don't know...
That's on our books.
It costs us less than we pay.
That,
It costs us less. The value of the asset is less than what we pay for. Okay, and that's the number we're looking for. So when you say that previous citizens were, shall we say, subsidizing future, okay?
Theoretically, yes.
Theoretically, yeah, but we've had all these other factors take place, and right now, what you're talking about is a $30 million asset that we're going to buy, and we're going to put it on the backs of current citizens. And that just doesn't seem right to me.
Well, I think the way this boils down is, do we need this expansion? That's the first thing we have to say. Do we need the expansion, yes or not? Yes or no? Do we have the ability to pay for it out of our own money, or do we want to borrow the money? Because this is where this comes down to. And if we want to borrow the money, then any lender is going to look at a debt-to-income ratio. They're going to see all debts, they're going to see all revenue. And I'm fine, as long as you know, we do it for a little while, we build up a fund to keep the current charges lower and put it on the backs of the access. So we have, you know, we raise it for 2 or 3 years, we build up a fund balance, and then we pay, you know, we have that fund balance to pay the bill into the future in case something happens, and we just pay the bills off of the access system.
Commissioner Hess, you and I have talked about this extensively, obviously. The bills are being subsidized now. Even your existing, and I know the rate structure is not allowed to be set up this way, but the last USDA loan, yeah, we borrowed, $6-7 million, but they also gave us $4 or $5 million in grant money. The entire system is being subsidized by grants. So no one is paying what it should.
No one is paying what it should cost. Because we keep getting grants, and we can't charge access fee for grants, and we're still going to keep getting grants, and I don't have a problem with the grants. My problem is that we're planning on moving forward and paying for this with, on the backs of customers instead of on the backs of the access fee, which is where it should be.
I think we all jump on the merry-go-round wherever it's at when we get here, and we pay for the price of admission. And it's a matter of looking at all the expenses and all the revenue and spreading it over the whole group of people. Like you said, I don't have a problem for the price of admission. I don't think anyone can say, hey, I paid for this whole road that I'm driving on every day. You know, it's what is it costing everyone, and how do we split that into a fair share for everyone? I think that's the best we could do.
Except when you're building a new road.
We're with you, but that's just the federal government, and also
The federal government, what we're doing here today is making the decision.
All
right, let's move on to solid waste fund.
That's the last one. So on our solid waste fund, we'll be asking for a CPI increase here, and that will take your residential rate from $196 to $200 a year. The additional revenue that comes in, $92,000 of that will be from the existing, $50,000 of that is from the $4 increase per user, and then 92% of that, $92,000 is growth.
First increase in 12 years.
First increase,
In 10 years, first increase in 10 years, and this
$4 a year.
$4 a year.
$4 a year, and it will continue from here on, due to just the way the math works. Whether we grow or not, it's still going to be.
I don't have any problem with that one either. The 2% will continue.
It's still a good deal for us.
2%, that's right.
It's still a good deal.
And the only way that 2% will not increase is if Waste Pro, somebody have a bad year and they don't have a 1% increase they request for, then we could lower ours, but as long as ours will almost mirror theirs. Because we've used up that delta.
This came out of the new contract, right?
That's right.
They got the new trucks for the new contract.
That comes in October.
October 1st.
How many, only 2 new trucks, they have to add trucks every year?
Two more every year. I think it's 4 total. I think it's 4.
2 this year and then...
2 next year. That's us.
Anyone else in the audience like to speak? Questions, comments?
Request.
Mr. Cooper, you want to make a request?
Sure, I would.
Come on down.
I'm Wayne Cooper. I'm the chairman of the Soil and Water Conservation District here in Wakulla. Thank you, Mr. Harris. Commissioner, I've reached out to each one of you individually. As you know, the Soil and Water Conservation District Board of Supervisors is an unpaid group. They're elected for 4-year terms. There are 5 of us in there now. And so we have been struggling along for the last 3 years. We've been doing car washes. We've been doing fundraisers. We've been contributing money ourselves. And so we've come across some very nice programs. We've been working with the 4-H. We've been working with the Wakulla Master Gardeners Program, and particularly with the United States Department of Agriculture, where we've helped our local farmers receive $160,000 in grants this year for things like burning, planting longwood pine, things of that nature. So what I've done is I've asked the Board of County Commissioners for $5,000 to help us continue our good service to the community.
And y'all are a pseudo-federal agency, or?
We were established in 1937 here in Florida, directly after the Dust Bowl, when we realized that we needed to find better ways to farm. So our main concern is clean water and keeping the soil from eroding. And so with that, because we're such a small community, we don't have that many farmers anymore, like Monticello.
Yeah, beekeepers.
We got some beekeepers, and we got what's coming of age now is the urban farming. So a portion of this $5,000 will be used. We've been talking to TCC at the Environmental Institute. So we're looking at different ways that we might be able to institute a large urban farm that we can help with feeding the kids in the summer, the kids that don't get fed. So that's really what the majority of the money's going for. We don't, like I said, we don't have a ton of farmers out there looking for our help, but the ones that do really need us. So I'd appreciate if you guys would consider it to be the first funding we've had in a few years. And so if you have any questions, I'd be happy.
Y'all used to get funding from the board?
We did.
And when was that stopped?
I came on the board 3 years ago, and we haven't had any funding since then. I think in 2017 and 18, we got $1,500 for a temporary personnel to help us out. So,
I think it's $5,000 well invested in our community, so.
I agree with you.
Help, so I don't, obviously we gotta find the money, but I think it's well worth it to put it back.
Thank you very much. Any questions?
Thank you, sir.
All right.
Come on down.
I'm Keisha Oliver. I deal with probation. I'm not calling. I'm actually on behalf of Lisa with tax collectors. I don't know her budget. David and Brandy handles mine, thank God. But I do know that we come to the tax collector, and they probably get tired of seeing me. I just want you to know the position for that handles Wakulla. I'm not specific, but please consider that position, not just for handling Wakulla, but for Leon too, because you have a lot of citizens. Not all of our citizens that we supervise for probation are from Wakulla. You have a lot of people who are from Leon, Jefferson, so I want you to please just consider that. They help us a lot because it's hard for me to get through in Tallahassee. We always use the internet anytime you need DMV or about a concealed weapons permit. We rely on them. They get tired of seeing me, they get tired of me calling, but I know I can get an answer, and they help the courts a lot. So just for your consideration, I'm just letting you know that we do need that. We do need
You would have to go to Tallahassee if she wasn't providing that service for you.
Commissioner Thomas, we would have to contact the internet. Usually when you call, I'm going to have to go through the internet, and they call us about 2 to 3 days later.
Right.
When you're dealing with somebody with a DUI, or you have a lot of clients, I don't want to put a judge on the spot, but a lot of times, even in court, we have a specific judge will say, hey, go across there and check with them. If your license is valid.
Right.
See what you need to do in order to get your license cleared up. That helps us a lot, so just FYI.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. If you want some stories, ask her.
Anyone else from the audience like to speak or ask questions or make a suggestion? Discussion from the board.
Well, we need to address this lack of service for our fire coverage, EMS coverage, because that could be just a disaster for us, liability-wise, and just I can see a real problem there. So we need to address that.
I agree.
I agree.
I'd like to maybe throw something out for the constitutionals to think about also. I'm not sure how we do this, but for the salary side of it, we basically got three challenges. The $15, which we have to do by statute. We're in a very unique situation now that we've got this compensation study that has drilled down to a position, to a name. In the past, I don't think we have ever, and nor do we want to, micromanage what the constitutionals are doing with their employees, but we got to figure out how we slice this pie, how we move forward, and what goes where. I don't want to ever be in a position where we say, all right, supervisor elections, you got to pay this position this amount of money. But we still got to figure out, I heard today that there's different studies that you guys have done and different salary, and that's good, and you should, but as we're slicing the pie, we got to make sure that we're spreading that thing around, properly. So I'm not sure what the answer is to that yet. My personal preference would be the $15 has to happen.
It doesn't have to happen this year, though.
It does not have to.
126.
My preference would be let's let that implement according to the statute, because I think most people are going to get past that with the compensation study. I think that's going to fix itself, and we don't have to deal with the $15. For some, we probably still will, but my preference would be let's try to hit the salary study. Let's try to say this is the amount of money it's going to take, and then going back to micromanaging your employees. Are we going to circle back and say, all right, is John Smith making this amount of money? I don't know that we want to do that because we've never done that. That's your authority, but we still got to figure out how to split that pie. And then, so preference, hit the salary study. Anybody that doesn't get boosted from the salary study and the $15, let's do the cost of living. This might not be the year to do a cost of living across the board, because if you're getting a bump from the salary study, you're getting the cost of living that's setting us flat, compared to our other counties. And so I think that's what we have to figure out. Do we calculate, because we do have the individual employees' information in this study, and do we say, all right, it's going to take this amount of dollars to implement the salary study, and then we give it to you, give it to the constitutionals, and you decide, okay, well, I'm going to do that or not. You know what I mean? That's kind of my preference. I don't want us to say year after year, say, all right, show me all your employees. And maybe everybody don't agree with that, but I think you guys have that authority, and we don't need to wedge into that, But we still have to know where the numbers are in order to figure out which one of these three, or all three, or how much of these three we bring in. So just something to think about.
My thing is, I agree with you, part of it. I don't think, from what I understand, the $15 an hour doesn't really affect that many people, correct? I know it doesn't as far as it affects some of the sheriff's office, because I think 42%, so the sheriff's office and the BOCC is the biggest, but like the smaller, most everybody is already at the $15 an hour. I told David the other day, as soon as we get the study done and to get the numbers worked out, I like to see it along with the CHP increase, and also wait when the property appraisers come back, so we will have more numbers to say, okay, this is where we're at and this is where we need to be. So, it's a lot of information today. I learned a lot. Thank you, David. It was really good presented for it. I know it's going to be a hard year, but from everything that I saw the other day in our meeting and from tonight, was going to be the option to me. That's my opinion about it. For it, option 3 is obviously not even close. I'm not for raising taxes.
I think people are paying enough as it is. I understand that might eventually have to happen, but I think we need to...
That's gonna have to happen.
Well, I understand that eventually it's gonna have to happen, but I mean, I understand we might have to increase some things, but, I just wanna look at the study, get the property appraiser and see what our increase is. Because I understand that this year, from what correct me if I'm wrong, this year we're not in emergency, but it's the reoccurring charges after we get through this year because of the funding we got through the CARES Act and the Americans Act. So, correct me if I'm wrong on that, but I know it's not emergency right this second. So, I also agree with Ralph. I mean, that, by statute we have to 2026, but then again, sometimes it's better to bite the bullet. I'm a firm believer paying people who take care of Wakulla County, and when I say Wakulla County, I'm talking about from the janitor to EMS to fire to sheriff to county employees. Since I've been elected, I know y'all need more people. That's obvious. People don't have a clue what y'all doing there, like Brandy and Summer and all that, and it's only going to get worse. So I appreciate everything y'all do. I know that. Y'all have surely opened my eyes in the last 7 months. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If I could just add one thing about, we're talking about this $15 an hour thing. Everything in our office, I don't want to have minimum wage employees in my office. So when we move the minimum wage to $15, that's going to push the wages up of the people who are currently making $15 an hour, which is substantially more than minimum wage. So there's a wave effect of going to this $15 an hour because the people in my office who are currently making close to $15 an hour, when you get hired on at $15 an hour, they're going to have a higher wage than that because why would they do what they're doing for $15 an hour? Their skills demand more than minimum wage. So this... in the next couple of years, there's going to have to be some increases above typical because, I don't want the folks in my office making minimum wage. They're worth more than that.
Well, I'm hoping your proposal comes back really good.
Did the Raftilla study incorporate the effect of this $15 an hour minimum? So this study, okay. So they're already saying what we're going to need to be once the $15 an hour comes in.
To hit $15, yes. I'm curious. And then there's the market
The
component.
market component is the largest
Yeah.
component of the compensation study.
I
Right.
think people are getting things
Yes, they
Yeah,
are.
there's the
Intermix.
$15 an hour and
two different things.
$15 an hour is by statute.
have to do that.
2026.
2026.
The market is the big
Next year
number.
it's $11 an hour that we have to do.
And I'm working on, like I told y'all before, I'm working on a spreadsheet that makes my eyes want to go cross, but it'll take in a little bit of what everybody said. All the compromise.
Everything's real easy as long as Ed gives us good numbers.
That's right.
And Lisa collects a bunch of money. All our job is real easy at that point.
Soon the tangible property is probably going to be a little different.
We'll see the numbers. Anyone else have anything else? Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
And adjourn, thank you.
Those